Today we're here at a gas station in Japan because the pricing seems like it's crazy cheap. To American right now, regular gas is 162 yen per liter, which works out to be only $1.05 USD. And then high octane, which is over 100 octane, is only 173 yen per liter, which is about $1.09 USD. But that's the illusion. It may seem like it's super cheap, but it's actually not. And we're gonna get into that today.
How much is it a liter?
Well, with our membership, it's only 161 yen.
How much is that in USD?
Pretty much $1 flat. Now, one thing that people usually don't understand right away is that everything here is per liter. They'll look at the pricing and not understand that that's not gallons. I know everywhere else in the world is metric and they understand liters, but for Americans, you're looking at that thinking it's crazy cheap, and with the exchange rate as well, you're even like, damn, that's really cheap fuel. But a really good reminder, obviously 3.78 liters is a gallon. So right now when I look at the national average for the US, it's about $4 a gallon. Give or take a few cents here and there. But that means that it's pretty much on par. The price that we're paying here, yen per liter, I think we won a ticket or a coupon or something. Yeah, see? Anyways, the price that we're paying per liter, if you times that by 3.78, works out to be pretty much $4 USD at the exchange rate per gallon. So what we're paying here in Japan is pretty much the same as what it is in the US, but it's actually more expensive for a Japanese citizen. And this is kind of like where we're gonna go into that illusion thing that I was telling you about, which really goes into the economy in Japan and the cost of living and the average wage here and how different it really is. We just filled up the K-Van. It took 20 liters at 161 yen per liter. Our total was after tax 3,268 JPY. That works out to be $20.56 USD with the current exchange rate. Now, one thing I do actually want to also do is let's look at this in AUD. Australia is in a massive fuel crisis right now. That works out to be $28.67 Aussie dollar. Now, there is still a little bit of an illusion there for the Australians as well, even though your exchange rate is actually better right now for you guys, but the cost of living is very different here and the average wages are very different here as well. We'll dive into that in a little bit, but I do feel for you guys in Australia, the price that you're paying per liter is getting close to pretty much what the US is paying per gallon, but for a liter. I don't understand that whole situation. As an Australian that lived there 10 years ago, I still, to this day, never understood why Australia has some of the world's biggest and best quality oil reserves in the ground, but never drills. Hopefully this whole situation leads to everyone in Australia deciding to just drill, baby, drill. But you know, it is what it is, and we'll leave the political stuff aside. But I do feel for you guys in Australia. You guys are definitely in a crisis right now. And to you, this is actually crazy cheap. So you're probably the only people that will look at this and be like, dude, I don't know what he's talking about. It's crazy cheap. But yeah, there still isn't a bit of an illusion there, but we need to get going because we can't sit here and wait for too long. So let's go.
Rising crude oil prices are taking a heavy toll on Japan's economy.
As crude oil prices have surged due to the situation in Iran, all Nippon Airways and Japan Airlines plan to raise fuel surcharges on international flights for tickets issued in June and July.
200円いくかなと思ったけど、今週ギリギリ大丈夫と思ってきたんですよね。
I'm worried, and I'm not the only one.
A car is necessary for me. I don't really have a choice, especially for hospital visits.
So the whole reason why I wanted to do today's video is because there's some stuff obviously happening in the world right now that is affecting oil prices and our gas prices at the pump. But not just that, Japan's actually been heavily affected in a ton of different markets. For example, paint and body shops right now, they can't get the chemicals that they need for prep washing the cars, as well as thinning out the paints and stuff like that. So that whole market has been affected, and we've seen a massive price increase on just local supplies for painting. Masking tape is another thing, the glue that they use. Right now, some home centers have put a limit on how much masking masking tape you can purchase per person. And it's not just that, but also the DTF liquid that's going in a lot of our diesel cars, the AD Blue stuff. There's a huge shortage on that right now, which is affecting all of our emergency services and stuff like that are directly having a problem because we can't get that. Japan is a very unique place. There's no oil in the ground here. Everything is imported. But where Japan was very smart is that the government made sure that there's roughly about a year's worth of emergency supplies stored here, already pre-refined and good to go. Something maybe Albanese could really, take a bit of advice from is the Japanese government. Not only did they have over roughly a year of storage here, but they also subsidized it. The moment everything started happening internationally that was affecting gas prices, the government stepped in. We saw gas prices soar to 190 yen per liter for about 48 hours before the government stepped in and started subsidizing it and knocking it back down to 170 yen per liter, which actually means that the price is probably a lot more than what we are seeing at the pump right now. So it is a little bit of an illusion. You may think that, oh yeah, 170 is kind of cheap, we're not even being affected by it. But actually, it's probably much higher, and the government has subsidized it and is kind of doing kickbacks so that the price is always staying under 170 yen. Now, that aside though, the other thing is you need to understand the cost of living in Japan. Something that a lot of people don't realize is the average wage for, let's say, someone that's 25 years old that is working like a salaryman kind of job. A good wage would be about 250,000 Japanese yen they're taking home per month. That's going to work out to be about 1,800 US, or maybe if you're lucky, if you got a really good job, they're paying a little bit more, about 2,200 USD per month. That's not a lot of money per month. And if you think about how much rent is in the US and stuff like that for a decent house or, an apartment or something like that, that's pretty much gone. And then you've got the cost of living with just, food, gas, insurance, like all that type of stuff. You would have nothing left over to save if you were getting paid that in the USA, right? So if you think about it from a Japanese citizen's perspective, that's why things have that illusion right now that everything's cheaper in Japan. And that also comes into how astronomically the USD is inflated. That's something to be very, very careful of. If the Japanese yen was at the rate that it's really supposed to be without that inflated US dollar right now, then you would look at Japan's fuel cost and be like, oh wow, that's actually very expensive. And just normal things like the cost of living would be very expensive. So you got to understand that there's a massive inflation there right now that kind of gives you that illusion that things are cheaper in Japan. And right now, some things may be cheaper because that US dollar, if you're earning US dollar, things are cheaper for you to purchase here and do here and whatnot. But fuel is just not that. It does work out to be about the same at the end of the day. So you got to take that into account. The cost of living here is obviously cheaper because the average salary, the average wage is cheaper here, but it all ends up leveling out at the end. But fuel is definitely expensive for the normal Japanese person here, especially considering we have no digging, no drilling, no nothing happens here. It's all imported. So the fuel should be expensive when you take all of that into account, right? It's stored here, the transportation, all that kind of stuff. Nothing gets pulled out of the ground here. So with all of that being said, why does it still feel like, for me, like I've been living in Japan now for 10 plus years, but it does still feel cheap when I fill up at the gas station? That kind of contradicts everything we just spoke about. Well, it actually has a lot to do with these cars. This is a K car. You guys know we call this the KTR. It's all-wheel drive, it's turbo, it's even got the TE37s, but it has got to be one of my favorite cars. It's only 660 cc's, and whenever I fill it up, it's like 30 bucks. And this is exactly why it does feel cheap when we fill up our cars in Japan. A lot of us are using these K cars to get around. Not only is insurance and registration super cheap, it's like $20, $30 every 2 years to own one of these. It's ridiculous. And they can pretty much get you from A to B. Japan is a small, long, skinny island, so we don't have to do these massive, long driving trips and stuff like that. And public transport here is crazy good. It's probably the best in the world, and you don't really need a car to live in Japan. In fact, May, my wife, didn't even have her license when I met her, and it wasn't until a few years ago that she got it before having Hugo. So, really, owning a car in Japan and having a driver's license is really not a necessity. It's more like, you know, you buy a game and you get that DLC later. Getting your license and getting a car in Japan is just that. It's you get that little bit of extra DLC where you can go explore places that public transport can't get to, but it's not like you're missing out on the Japan experience and living here and everything else that it has to offer. So I hope that kind of answers the question of why it does still feel cheap for us, because we're not filling up our cars as much as everyone else in the world. And we don't have to travel as much. And we also have K cars and other small vehicles and stuff that just don't take as much gas. I don't even think I've seen any of those big F trucks or anything like that here. And if you do, it's usually the guys that are living on base that have brought it with them from their country. So it's kind of interesting. It's a different perspective, that's for sure. But let's do a little bit of a comparison here, right? Let's look at the fuel prices that we just looked at here in Japan and compare it to places like Europe. You live in Europe, Japan's crazy cheap, like really, really cheap. I feel for you guys. If you're in the US, it's practically the same, except, you know, the whole gallons to liters thing can kind of throw you off. To be completely honest, I would actually prefer, and I know this is weird because I love metric and I think it's ridiculous that the US, okay, we're gonna go on a tangent, but why can't everywhere in the world just say 0 is freezing and 100 is boiling? Can we not all just have that? Anyways, that aside, but like I do kind of like gallons because you see the price from the side of the road and you pull in and you're like, ooh, that's a little expensive. And you know what you're getting into. Liters, it throws you off. You look at it, you're like, dang, that's really cheap. But then you fill up your car and you end up paying, you know, 9,000, 10,000, 100 bucks. And you're like, oof, that really kind of hurts. It's like, you know, when you go to buy something and they give it to you in installments and it's like, oh yeah, this is actually really cheap. But then at the end of it, you actually ended up paying more than what you should have, right? It's kind of just throws you off. Anyways, but yeah, to the US, the price here is pretty much the same. To Australia, like I said, I really feel for you guys. You guys are going through a fuel crisis right now and it makes 0 sense with all the resources that Australia has. And I really do hope that this leads to a wake up. The general people will keep pushing the government and the government will start making some smart decisions for the economy and the people of Australia. It makes absolutely no sense, the green initiative that they've been doing in Australia and how much it's hurt it, especially when where I was born and brought up was in Mount Isa. That entire mine has literally been leased out to China. I do not understand that. That makes 0 sense to me. And yet there's it hurts my brain to know that Australia is in debt, but there's so much in the ground that hasn't been touched. And I'm not just talking about oil and all that kind of stuff. That's another whole topic. Oh, let me just quickly add this snippet in with this little, I don't know why I care so much because I'm so dedicated to living in Japan now, but check this out, guys. The Australian people, did you hear that nice little whistle? Shh. The Australian people paid more last year in tax on beer than what all of these companies that have been taking our natural gas resources, I said our, but you know, whatever, I'm an expat now, have been taking gas out of the country and exporting it because the government hasn't taxed them for it. They've got some weird subsidy thing where they're not taxing companies that are exporting the natural resources in the ground of Australia. They're not taxing that. The Australian people paid more in beer tax than what any company did taking that out of the ground. It makes 0 sense. Anyways, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people in the comments talking about that. If you're Australian, if you're American, you're sitting there like, what? But yeah, anyways, trust me. Literally, Australia could be completely debt-free in probably less than 12 months if they just started drilling and just started actually doing what they should be doing. Anyways, let's not talk about that. We're getting off topic. But then, like, you know, you get the point. The comparison's there. If you're in Europe, I feel for you guys. You guys are going through something really tough over there. Your fuel prices are out of control as well. The US, we're the same. I feel like New Zealand's kind of like the same as Australia right now. But like in all, it all is relative to where you are. What is the cost of living where you are? What is the average wage where you are? I think I got it a little bit wrong actually when I talked about the average wage. I have this written down here on a piece of paper, so bear with me a second. I want to make sure I get this right. But the average wage in Japan for a 25-year-old person is usually 258,000 Japanese yen. And if you have a really good job, you're earning about maybe 350,000 yen before taxes, right? So you're going to average about 1,600 to 2,200 USD per month. That's rent, electricity, all your normal things. Like,
it's
people
tough.
don't understand how tough it is in Japan. And this is where a lot of people get confused when they move here. They don't understand that the cost of living and everything and the wages that they're going to earn isn't going to add up, and they're not going to be able to afford some of the luxuries that they had back at home in the US. When you start looking at moving to Japan and working in Japan full time, it doesn't make sense when you look at what you're earning in the US and that USD. So it's kind of funny and ironic at the end of the day. But anyways, we've been talking a lot this video, and it's just something I really wanted to put out there. Previously, I actually made a video about, how cheap the fuel and everything was in Japan, but that I don't think I really dove into it and really understood everything. But now that I've been here for a fair few years, I'm starting to really understand how much of an illusion that is, and just how relative it is to where you live and what your salary and your wage is in that country. And like, I've always been honest and upfront with you guys, I pay myself minimum wage. Same with May. We put everything back into the company and what we do. So when I go and fill up my Supra and it costs me over like 12,000 yen to fill up, which is about $100, it hurts. Same with the Skyline. The K-Van is king though.
Yeah, that's because the Supra.
It's also high octane.
Yeah, way
and it has a
bigger
70-liter tank. This has like, what, a 40-liter tank? I don't know. But also, this will get me to A to B way cheaper than anything else. The efficiency and everything of this, and then if you go to Prius, man, you're laughing. Japan is just so good for these cheap, compact cars. It's great. Can't complain.
Why can't we use ethanol?
Yeah, let's not talk about that. Japan doesn't have ethanol at the pump. I'm gonna get by the barrel.
There's no corn.
Yeah, that's true. There's no corn here, so it has to be a different type of biomatter. But all ethanol in Japan is imported too. It's not made here.
Yeah. We need redneck to just keep eating corn every day.
Yeah, no, okay. I figured it was a really good opportunity to ask some other people that live here in Japan, and including a local at that. But Riley has been here just as long as me, actually a little bit longer. And you've actually got a Toyota Altezza, right?
Yeah.
Gita. So Altezza Gita, so it's a really cool station wagon. Now, first of all, how do you feel about gas prices in Japan? Are they expensive?
Coming from Canada, it was about on par when I got here, and then it started getting more expensive here. Mm-hmm. And then recently with like the tax cuts, it's gone back down to reasonable. But yeah.
It's pretty good for you. Like, how much would you fill up a tank for?
8,000 yen.
8,000 yen. Right. And what's it like now that this car's turboed? And bear in mind that we're just doing a fuel cut Defender, so it drinks a little bit of fuel.
Spending money on a Link right now would be a fuel saving endeavor. It's gone from about 20. I'm from Canada, so we're going to use the weird like miles per gallon thing because that's just
okay.
Went from about 22 to 26 down to about 16.
Okay.
So
it's just a decent amount.
About 50% more. But the miles per gallon is what's important.
Okay, yeah, fair. Now, one question I have, because I don't remember when I was in Canada, but do you guys go by gallons or liters there?
Liters.
You go by liters?
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. But you still use mile per gallon.
It depends, we talk about height in feet and inches, weight in pounds.
Oh my gosh.
Distance in kilometers.
Yeah. Australia's a little bit like that too still. So it's more so in the trades. So you go talk to a plumber and he'll be like talking about sizes and things, and depending on what it is, it'll go in and out too. So it is what it is. Okay, well that's a good thing. But like, as you, that someone lives in Japan, you feel like gas is relatively expensive for what it is.
Yeah, I've considered taking the train, but I just enjoy driving.
Driving too much? Okay, yeah. But obviously special circumstances, right?
Yeah.
And then Suzuki-san over here, and I'm going to switch to Japanese. Suzuki-san, 日本でガス高いですか?
高いです。
So 高い means expensive. He's saying it's expensive. どのぐらい一週ぐらい使ってる?
1週間で5000円ぐらいは使います、最低で。
2週?
1週。
1週. So 1 week he uses about 5,000 yen, and he thinks that's expensive.
1日20キロぐらいしか乗らないです。
So he doesn't drive more than 20 kilos a day. So just to work and back, right? 仕事だけ?
そうそうそう。
なるほど. We're doing a boost leak test right now in his car. Came in because his brake pedal was feeling weird, and then now we found broken couplers everywhere. So we'll fix this thing. So it just kind of furthers my point of what I was saying, where really the cost of gas or the cost of anything really is relative to where you live. What's the cost of living like? What's the average wage like and all that kind of stuff. But it is also interesting that when you think about how Japan is importing everything, you would expect the gas to be a lot more expensive than what it would be level with in the US right now. Obviously, the stuff that's happening in the world right now is affecting that. But and then obviously you need to take into account how inflated the US dollar is. But I think you would find that if everything was kind of more normalized with the exchange rate as well as the US dollar not being so inflated and stuff, you would find that gas would be more expensive here than anywhere else. Well, depending on where you live. Europe, guys, I feel for you. Australia, I feel for you right now. Anyways, with that aside though, I think that kind of wraps up today's video. I hope you like this. A little bit of a different video. I want to do more of this kind of stuff from time to time, but I'm also curious what's the gas prices like where you live and how do you feel about everything we discussed today? Do you agree? Do you think that I got something wrong? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to learn and hear from you guys. And yeah, what's your local gas station prices? See you in the next one, guys. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Peace. Oh, in the next video, you get to see probably the new livery on the Comcar. It's exciting.